Good morning, America. Breaking right now, one Tea Party senator's all-night marathon fight against the president in a bizarre blockbuster speech on Capitol Hill.
I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them. Sam, I am.
Former Clinton liar and stooge George Stephanopoulos now doing ABC News there on Good Morning America, calling Ted Cruz's all-night speech a bizarre speech, and of course trivializing it by just playing the Dr. Seuss moment. That's just one flavor of how the media has covered this story. Joining us now, Brent Bozell, president of the Media Research Center. Brent, you know I love watching the media, and I was so excited about how they were going to cover this action by Ted Cruz, because I saw how objective they were when they covered Wendy Davis, the state senator in Texas, when she filibustered a bill that would have prevented abortion on demand, no matter the age of the baby being aborted, and also put some basic health laws in place for an abortion clinic in the state of Texas. She was a hero for filibustering that. How did the media cover Ted Cruz's effort against Obamacare?
I mean, it's the perfect comparison. The perfect comparison. This lady, for doing the filibuster that she did, was elevated by the.
I think we lost. Brett, hey, Brett, your signal is popping in and out there. I don't know if you're if you're on the Beltway or something, but I need you to get into.
No, I'm on a.
All right, we're going to try to reconnect with Brett, and we'll get to him. Brent Bozell, of course, president of Media Research Center. Listen, he created the business model of keeping an eye on the media, and somebody needs to pointing them out, and so he's the perfect person to talk about how this was covered. You heard there from George Stephanopoulos. Let's play a little bit more actually on how this is Jeff Zeleny. He is with let's play it, and I'll tell you where he is.
This freshman firebrand from Texas is really holding an all-night crusade, but this is no ordinary policy debate. He's talked about Dr. Seuss, and in the wee night hours, he even invoked the reality show Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, so again, the guy, Ted Cruz, senator, speaks for 20 hours. I watched so much of it, and he talked about ideas the conservatives have. He talked about process. He talked about procedure. He talked about his own Republicans who weren't supporting him and the fact that they answer to the voters, not to leadership. Listen, and all they do is trivialize it and talk about Duck Dynasty.
As a communicator, he was incredibly good. And he had substance, and he had facts, and he went for 20 hours. And, yeah, of course, in a 20-hour debate, you're going to waver into other areas. That's part of what a filibuster is.
Right.
You know, you throw a lot of stuff in there just to keep going. But he talked endlessly about things of substance, and not much of that got reported in the mainstream media.
Here's the great thing about Twitter and how things work these days when this is going on. As the media was covering Ted Cruz's speech, he could see how they were covering it, and he actually addressed that on the floor. This was actually my favorite moment of what he said, because, and by the way, frankly, he called out people like us who were fascinated by what he was doing, and we talked about the process so much, but we didn't talk about the substance. He targeted all of us.
But I'm going to suggest if all of your coverage or most of your coverage is on the political process, on this personality or that personality, on who's up or who's down, or how this impacts the 2042 presidential election, I'm going to suggest two things. Number one, that's not doing the job that you have stepped forward to serve and do. Well, look, all of us have a job. Those of us in this body elected to serve have a job to listen to the people and to fight for the men and women of America. But those of you who serve in the media have a job to report to the men and women in America what's happening, and not just on the political game.
Brent Bozell is back with us, and Brent, I was just mentioning the fact that, you know, the obvious biases are easy to point out, but there was a subtle bias too, because they tried to talk about Ted Cruz as a person, talk about Ted Cruz, you know, thumping his chest and trying to elevate his stature, instead of actually focusing on the real world problems people are having with Obamacare, the stuff that Ted really was talking about.
But you know, guys, this is the script, and it's been the script for years. So many of the policy prescriptions of this administration are not only failures, but they are indefensible failures. So what do? When you're faced with a failure you supported, which is indefensibly a failure, you attack the person's character. You saw Dick Durbin do it. You saw him to do it. This is how the left responds, and this is how the news media are responding. What they should have done is not what they did, all chuckling aside, with that lady in Texas, because they were out of line with that lady in Texas. They would have been out of line with Ted Cruz to elevate him as they elevated her to presidential timber. What they should have done is reported this, simply reporting it fairly and talking about the substance. And oh my, was there substance. There was 20 hours of substance that he delivered. It was one of the most riveting moments that I've seen on Capitol Hill in my entire life.
All right, so, look, I think you make a great point, but let's pull back a little bit and look at the whole Obamacare debate that's happening up on Capitol Hill. What confidence do you have that this is going to be fairly reported? I mean, the way it seems to me, it's going to be, the Republicans, they just want to shut down the government. And, an argument could be made that the exact opposite is true. How is that going to play out?
It hasn't been fair. It isn't fair now, and it won't be fair. Unfortunately, some on the GOP side of the debate are at fault on this one because they are feeding the narrative to the left. The simple idea of the government shutdown. How is it that Republicans would be responsible for the shutdown if they pass a continuing resolution that funds everything but Obama? How would they be the ones doing the shutdown? The only way you would have a shutdown after that is if the Democrats didn't want to do it, at which point they have closed down the government. Now, you mentioned that, and everybody says, well, of course, but, Republicans will be blamed. Well, maybe they'll be blamed because everybody says, regardless of the truth, everybody continues to repeat that. Let me tell you another falsehood, and this is a mythology that's out there, and I cannot believe even Republicans use this. Why, if Republicans are for the shutdown, oh my, how it's going to hurt them. Now, how do we know that? Because there is history. Look what happened to Newt Gingrich. Okay, folks, let's look and see what happened to Newt Gingrich. When the government was shut down, again, it was not Republicans, it was not Newt Gingrich, it was Bill Clinton. What was the result? In the House, they lost 2 seats. In the Senate, they picked up 2 seats. There were no negative repercussions. And I love what one reporter said to me yesterday. Well, what about Bob Dole? My answer was, Bob Dole.
But you will agree with me, though, that in politics sometimes perception is more important than reality, and the perception that's going to be painted by the mainstream media is not going to be favorable to Republicans, correct?
Look, the perception is always more important than the reality. But in this case, it is perception and reality that this is a train wreck. I don't understand why the Republicans. I don't understand why John McCain is being, frankly, such a coward. He is running for the tall grass at a time when the majority of Americans. Wasn't it interesting, guys, that the day after Obamacare was signed into law, Barack Obama went on the road to sell it? It's never been sold. The American people have never bought this. And every poll that comes out, it's worse and worse and worse.
Right.
And what Republicans should be saying, among other things, is it was illegal for the president to give big business an exemption.
Brent Bozell,
he has no right to do that.
We got to leave it there. Always great to have you. And by the way, we're looking forward to seeing you tonight. The Big Media Research Center Gala. Our very own Chris Plant is going to be one of the presenters. And next time you see me and Brian, we'll be wearing tuxes.
We'll be in tuxes.
Yeah.
Right.
It takes a lot to get us in a penguin suit, but for you, Brent Bozell.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Look forward to it.